Well, here's a bit of a story. What are the chances that a kid is growing up in Victoria, a city or a town that's not exactly known for cowboys or rodeos or Western music? And what are the chances that that kid gets a book by Will James? That guy. Now, Will James is a famous, very famous Western writer, and even more famous as a Western artist. And he drew horses and he drew cowboys and told stories in a way that made that young kid vibrate. Now, what are the chances that that kid's dad said, my boy Ian likes these books, so that takes care of every Christmas and birthday for the next 5 years? And what if maybe reading those books, maybe, just maybe, he thinks, I could be a cowboy? What about that? And what if that sends him to trying out the rodeo? And he goes to the rodeo and he's half decent. He's not all decent, but he's half decent. He's decent enough to get in the rodeo, but also to end up in the hospital with a broken ankle. Now, what are the chances that as he's in the hospital with a broken ankle, there's a guy in the bed beside him who happened to have brought a guitar even though he couldn't play it? What are the chances that this kid, Ian, would pick up that guitar and say, let me try? And he tries to figure out a song by Johnny Cash that was all the rage that year, a song called I Walk the Line. Now, what are the chances that that guy Ian learns that song well enough that he falls in love with the guitar, and that guitar takes him to Toronto? Now, what are the chances while he's in Toronto playing music, he meets a singer named Sylvia, and Ian and Sylvia get together and become a duo in the folk scene of Toronto, and they say, hey, let's go to where the action is. What are the chances that those two end up in Greenwich Village? Now, what are the chances that while they're in Greenwich Village trying to make a name for themselves, there's a guy named Robert Zimmerman trying to make a name for himself at the same time, and Robert Zimmerman makes a name for himself called Bob Dylan. So they're hanging out with Bob Dylan, and what are the chances that Bob Dylan turns to those two and says, you know what, you should try writing your own songs? Now, what are the chances that Ian Tyson is going to sit down on the advice of Bob Dylan to write his own song and comes up with this?
For strong winds that blow lonely,
Right?
7 seas that run high.
What are the chances? Now, what are the chances that that song becomes an incredible hit and they follow it up with great song after great song, and Ian and Sylvia become this thing, and they tour North America and they tour the United Kingdom. They come back and they play the Newport Jazz Festival and they sell out Massey Hall, and they are at the pinnacle of the folk music scene. Now, what are the chances of, as that is happening, the Beatles roar into town with a whole new sound that spells the end of the folk music scene? What are the chances? So then what are the chances of that kid, who's actually not a kid anymore, still loves cowboys, still loves the rodeo, and still loves the world that Will James put in his heart as a little boy? Now, what are the chances that he goes to Toronto and gets his own national television show, and right when it's going great, he says, screw this, I'm leaving. I want to go to where my heart is calling me, to where cowboys live down in Texas. I'm moving. Now, what are the chances that a couple of years before that, in his touring days, Ian Tyson gets stopped with marijuana in his guitar case? Now, what are the chances that that makes his green card impossible? So Ian Tyson can't go to Texas, so instead he says, where in Canada is a man with a heart that wants to be a cowboy gonna go? He's gonna go to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains right here in Alberta.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So, now what are the chances that while he is here, the words and the stories and the drawings of Will James still call to him, and he discovers the art of a man named Charlie Russell? Now, Charlie Russell was this incredible artist whose paintings spoke to Ian, and his music and his words started to go more and more about cowboys and the Western world and the ranch life that he was learning. That's this guy, Charlie Russell. Now, Ian Tyson can tell you more about this picture. He can talk about this painting and where it sits for hours. But I'll tell you what, you look at that painting and you say, how many Ian Tyson songs are sitting right in there? I'll tell you what, quite a few. Now, what are the chances that just at the same time this is going on, John Travolta, after the success of Saturday Night Fever and Grease, puts out a movie called Urban Cowboy? Now, what are the chances that that movie becomes the mainstreaming of country music, and suddenly it gives Ian Tyson a cowboy boots toehold on a new market? And what are the chances that when that happens, it's the luck that only happens to people who are persistent and don't give up and work incredibly hard? What are the chances that he gets a second lease on his career? Now, what are the chances that people out there who also know about Will James and who know about Charlie Russell suddenly look to Ian Tyson as their man, the man who can sing their music? And what are the chances that that whole group of people, as Ian Tyson is learning, they're the ones who know which end of the horse the food goes in? Now, what are the chances that at the same time that that is happening, there's a young girl, and this young girl loves to read too, and she loves stories that have strong female characters, stories like, and characters like Lucy and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Hermione and Harry Potter, and of course, Anne with an E in that place called Green Gables. What of that? That's this girl right here. Now, let's call that girl Alex, because that's her name. Now, what are the chances that this young girl, Alex, is athletic but doesn't quite have a fit? What are the chances that her mom says, I'm going to throw her in a luge camp at Canada Olympic Park, and suddenly she's there and it fits? And she thinks maybe, just maybe, I won't become crowned Lucy the Valiant of Narnia. No, but this firing myself down an ice chute at 160 kilometers an hour, maybe I can get good at that. Now, what are the chances that while she's doing that, she works at it and she gets good enough and by a breath sneaks onto the Canadian Olympic team at 18 years old, and she's off to Turin? Now, no one expected her to be there, and there she was. And around the world's best, this young kid places 20th. What are the chances? Now, here's an even bigger question. What are the chances that while that is going on, there is a man in the United States who is the man who wrote I Walk the Line, who's putting together an album that would actually be the final album of his life? That's right, Mr. Johnny Cash is putting together an album, and he says, I want songs that are gonna fit this time in my life. What are the chances that he would pick this song?
For strong winds that blow lonely, 7 seas that run high.
What are the chances that the man that wrote the song that Ian Tyson learned to play the guitar to on his final album of his career would choose a song written by Ian Tyson? Now, what are the chances of that happening? Now, there's a lot of chances, and this is where things are about to get really interesting, because about 4 years later, what are the chances that there's this young single mom in Calgary who's an artist, who loves art, and so she signs up at ACAD, but ACAD doesn't have a daycare. So she's got to bring her young baby either to ACAD, or she's got to leave the baby at home and pump her breast milk in the women's room at ACAD. And what if about a month of that in, she's sitting in the bathroom saying, I can't do this. This is no way to raise a kid, so she has to quit ACAD and decides, I am just going to find a way to paint on my own. Now, this young woman has bucket loads of talent. Unfortunately, she does not have bucket loads of cash. So what does she do? She goes down to Walmart and she buys Sharpies and watercolors by Crayola. And then on a whim, she says, what if I took those Sharpies and Crayolas and I drew people's profile pictures online and I put it out there? And what if I call those bad portraits? Now, what are the chances that that young artist puts out a portrait of Andy Samberg from Saturday Night Live? Yeah, that one. And what are the chances that Andy Samberg sees that and tweets about it? And just like a small ember that turns into a fire that goes across a field, the word gets out. And a year later, she has a feature in Maclean's magazine, and suddenly bad portraits are international. Now, what are the chances that when that happens, this young artist with a heart as big as the world gets to do two things she never dreamed she would be able to do? One, she has enough money to just be an artist. It's not a lot, but it's enough. And two, for the first time, this young baby who's now a young boy, she gets to do something for him. She gives him a week of day camp. Wow. What are the chances? And then while that's happening, what are the chances that Alex is on her way to Vancouver? And in 2010, this is the chance, this is her ability, this is her time for the podium, and she misses it. She misses the podium and she doesn't get there, but she decides, forget that. I am soldiering on, and so she does. Now, what are the chances that right around the same time that happens, Ian Tyson is doing a show where the monitor mix is off, and he's yelling into the mic because he can't hear himself, and he's trying to do it well, and he's trying to do it for his fans, but he hurts his voice, and then a cold that won't go away, and he loses his voice, and he goes to see a doctor right at the same time. What are the chances that that doctor would look him in the eye and give him this assessment? Mr. Tyson, you're fucked. What are the chances, right? And what are the chances that at the same time that is happening, there's a young businessman in Calgary, a young businessman with a gift for marketing and an ability to gather friends around, and he gets let go from his corporate job at Big Rock Brewery. Now, what are the chances that instead of being bitter, he decides, why don't I get some friends together and we'll start our own brewery? And so they do. And they do it because of the belief that Jim Button has that it takes a village, and they call it Village Brewery. What are the chances? Now, what are the chances that at the same time that he's doing that, Alex is on her way to Sochi? This is her chance. This is where she is going to get on the podium, and she gives everything she has, and she misses the podium by 1/10 of a second. But the drug tests come back, and they kick the Russians off the podium, and they put her on the podium. Yes! But then, what are the chances that the Court of Arbitration says, I don't know if there's quite enough evidence, even though there's lots of evidence, and so they kick her off the podium and put the Russians back on. Now, that kind of disappointment would kill almost anyone's dream. But in a fit of perseverance and strength that could only be called Ian Tyson-esque, she says, screw that. I'm going to double down. I'm going to go to Korea, and I'm going to spend the next 4 years getting there. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go to school to be an engineer. Beat that. And that's what she does. She spends 4 years, 4 times 365, unless it's a leap year, for what? For 1/10 of a second. Now, what are the chances? At the same time she's making that decision, there's a former TV host who says to his brother and the rest of the team at Kelly Brothers, what do you guys say we try putting on a live show? It would be fun. We've always talked about it, and we could talk about the things in our city we love and the people in our country that we love, and it'll be great. But you know what? Let's not push too hard. Let's just make it a small show. Let's do it at Lunchbox Theater. Let's just do one for 80 people. How about that? What are the chances of that? And then, what if he phones his buddy who's the beer guy, and he says, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. And his buddy says, I got an idea. I'll sit in a chair beside you and say ignorant things for the whole show. And I said, hey, I've got my limits, right? And what are the chances that that artist that we know so well says, you know what, I've got this idea. With your brother Rob and Matt, we're going to put together a live art experience on projections that's going to be so technical, but at the same time so beautiful that it's going to blow people's minds. What are the chances of suddenly the show comes together and for some reason people like it? What are the chances? And what are the chances at the same time that Corb Lund starts hanging out with Ian Tyson? And Ian Tyson and Corb get together, and Corb Lund says, I hated your old voice. I was tired of your old voice. I like this new voice better. It's got something. You need to put out an album. So what are the chances that a man named Ian Tyson at 81 years old puts out an album that all the reviews say it's Ian Tyson and his voice at the top of his game? 81 years old.
Bravo.
What are the chances that that happens to Ian Tyson while at the same time we have a guy on our show named Michael Bernard Fitzgerald? Michael Bernard Fitzgerald is this great singer. Now, what are the chances that the guitar player for Michael Bernard Fitzgerald is a guy named Russ Broom? And Russ Broom sees the show and goes, that is an awesome show. Do you know I have another project called the Flat Whites, and we're a band. Maybe we could be your house band. And it's like we're all looking at Santa Claus and we say, yeah, what are the chances, right? But it happens. Now, while that's going on, what are the chances that Alex Gough heads to Korea and she says, this is it, this is my chance, I'm gonna do it, and with 2 sliders left, she's on the podium, off the podium, on the podium, off the podium, on the podium, off the podium, on the podium, and when the snow settles, Alex Gough becomes the first Canadian Olympian in history to win a medal in luge. What are the chances?
Yeah.
Now, what are the chances that while that's going on, we're putting this show together, and our friend Mandy Stobo says, I love Will James and I love Charlie Russell. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could do a big Charlie Russell painting of my own for a show? And we all said, well, we need Ian Tyson for that. Now, what are the chances that Russ Broom, who plays and produces Michael Bernard Fitzgerald, who also plays with the Flat Whites, also has a gig as the guitar player for Ian Tyson? And what about Russ Broom says, Mr. Tyson, what are the chances that you come and do Dave Kelly Live? And he says, yes. Now, what are the chances that that beer guy that we've gotten to know right over here and that some of you know has been dealing with cancer? Now, what are the chances that for the past 2 months, they've been a rough couple of months for Jimmy and he's had to stare some pretty ugly things in the face? What are the chances that just 3 days ago, he gets out of the hospital? And what are the chances that when he comes out of the hospital, one of the things he's got is the boniest ass in the history of the world? Now, what are the chances that some of his friends would hear about that bony ass and say, there's no way he can sit on the stool of Dave Kelly Live, that will hurt? Now, what are the chances that from the time the word gets out, an hour later, 60 minutes later that the word gets out, my phone rings, and it's John. And John is a good friend of our good friend Jim, and John says, I'm standing in the Lazy Boy store, I just bought a chair. Where do I get it delivered? And what are the chances? What are the chances that that chair gets delivered, they take it apart, build it up, plug it in, get it working, get it ready to go, and then what are the chances that in this room someone says, I've got an Afghan and I think it should be on that chair? That's what Karen said. Karen brought that Afghan over for Jim, and now you can watch Jim Button out of the hospital for 3 days with a bony ass sitting on a comfy chair. Now, speaking of seats, what are the chances that you're sitting in those seats right now? Now, I want you to think about this. This show has been sold out for a month. For the past 4 weeks, people have been phoning us saying, I'll sit in the rafters, I'll sit in the aisles, I don't care, can I please come and see this show? And somehow, you ended up here. So I've only got one more question for all of you. What are the chances that you would end up in this seat tonight, in the same room, with Ian Tyson, with Alex Gough, with Mandy Stobo, with the Flat Whites, with Jimmy Button, and the world's boniest ass? I'll tell you what those chances are. Those chances are miraculous. And so welcome to Dave Kelly Live.
Bravo. Well done.